Hi, I'm going to give you a recap of the 2025 legislative session, even though I'm a little bit late. And we have some amazing legislators. It's one reason why Utah is one of the top states in the nation. And so, a lot of victories that we had, and also some bills to watch out for, and some bills that passed that we want to flip next session. So let's start with health. We've broken them into 4 categories. And the first one is health, water, food, that type of thing that parents can watch out for. And if you want to find any of these bills and look at how your legislator voted, go to tinyurl.com/Utah 2025 LEG. Okay, so the first one is HB 81, and that made it so that we won't have any more forced fluoride in our water. And this is really good because parents can still give their kids fluoride if they want to, but for those who don't want to, they're not being forced to have those chemicals in their water. The next one is HB 84. This is a vaccine disclosure in food, and this passed as well. It's really important transparency so that food containing vaccines or mRNA technology must now be labeled as a drug, empowering parents with that knowledge. Another win is HB 138, Truth in Food Labeling. This strengthened labeling laws. It means parents can finally make truly informed decisions about the food they provide their children. HB 402, no artificial food dyes in schools. This can protect our kids in schools by removing harmful artificial dyes from luncheons. The next one of concern is SB 80 and HB 274. These are water price hike bills, and this is important because of farmers, and this will make it so that, and research all of these bills. These are the opinions that I heard from other people, and makes me curious and want to go and find out more about them, ask my legislators about them, and do my own research. So anything that we're talking about here, please use it as your starting off point to find out what matters to you and how you can help get the best results. So what happened with SB 80 and HB 274 is these bills passed despite concerns that they're a water grab. It's designed to impose fees and tiered rates, which will drive up the costs for families who garden or farm, and potentially hurting family self-sufficiency under the guise of conservation. So maybe you agree with that, maybe you don't, but look into it. Another bill that didn't pass was SB 126, Airborne Chemical Amendments. We had a mom look into this who really wanted to get this passed. And what we found was that there was a congressional report done on it, and Biden asked them to do this report. And on page 14, it shows that one way to keep the sun from blocking, from increasing temperature rising is to put a layer of chemicals in the upper layer of our atmosphere, and thus to reflect the sun. And we didn't want these chemicals to fall down into our foods, our families, and our plants. And so that's why we're trying to get it passed. It actually passed the Senate and the Senate committee, and it failed in the House because they wanted stricter punishments on the bill, so they didn't pass it. So hopefully next year we can protect our state from federal testing, which is really what it's about. So HB 432 also didn't pass. This was an e-cigarette bill, and this would make it so that fruit flavors could be brought in and the percentage of nicotine would be increased in our vaping products. It's a reversal of last year's passing a bill to keep these e-cigarettes from having those fruit flavors and thus appealing to children. Now, surprisingly, this bill passed the House Business, Labor, and Commerce Committee, but it was killed on the House floor before it could go to the Senate. So we're really glad about that, but look at the votes and ask your representative how they voted, because these bills that are doing dangerous things, they're like, well, I really like this part of the bill that would have made it more difficult to get this done. So there's always those different aspects of the bill that people might be going for while bad things are happening on the side. So make sure you research them. Remember, go to that tiny URL that I gave you at the beginning, because that will help you read it yourself, which is vital. Okay, so now we're going on and we're going to talk about HB 203 Sub 5. It's the cannabis bill, which passed the House committee, the floor, and the Senate committee. Luckily, it was stopped on the Senate floor, or it just didn't even go to see how it passed. But as you talk to your reps about the cannabis bill, it would make more dispensaries and say like, oh, we really like it because we're going to have more restrictions in a certain aspect, even though there will be more dispensaries of cannabis. And so your rep may have voted for this. Ask them why. And find the problems that you think are this. One of the best ways to find this out is to go to the legislative committee hearing. And if you go to Citizen Portal, they have a transcript as well. I prefer to read rather than listen because I can scan through. And then I copy and paste it. And so on this bill, there were doctors who spoke against it. And so those experts are the ones who mattered most to me, rather than just general legislators thinking, oh, this is good, my friend told me this. So I tried to copy and paste that testimony, the public comment testimony, and share that with my legislators. And that's how we could be helpful with them, is by doing our own research and sharing it in a respectful way. So let's see, I'll keep going here. Okay, now we're moving on to family and parental rights. And we saw great progress in affirming that parents, not the government or special interests, are the primary authority in raising their children. For instance, HB 228, Public Education Immunization Amendments. It won. It passed. It strengthens parental rights regarding school vaccination policies, ensuring parents remain the decision makers for their children's health. HB 209, Homeschool Amendments, also won. This was an amazing thing. I got to be there for that, and it just so happened that all the homeschooling parents were there wearing their t-shirts, and they got to stand up and show the committee that they really wanted this bill, because what happens previously to 209 is that schools were asking parents to prove that they had not hurt their children before they would allow them to homeschool them. So we wanted it to say we didn't want the unnecessary government burdens like background checks, so that we could respect the rights of parents to direct their children's education as the Utah Constitution and the federal Constitution allow. Okay, the next one is HB 233, School Curriculum Amendments. This keeps harmful agendas out of schools by prohibiting entities performing elective abortions from providing health instruction. What that means is Planned Parenthood used to come in to teach sex ed. And even though they weren't teaching about abortion, they were forming positive relations and being seen as a leader in the community about reproduction or the lack thereof, killing babies. Anyway, so this made it so that Planned Parenthood couldn't be giving the sex ed lessons anymore. It was a beautiful thing to see, and it protects agendas from coming into our classroom, or the advertising of them is what it was happening. The next thing was an amazing win. If you haven't seen anything about it, it was HB 269, Privacy Protection in Colleges. And what happened with this was there was a woman in a woman's only dorm. There were co-ed dorms that a man was living in as pretending to be a woman. And so as he was in this here, he was the RA over it, she was really uncomfortable. So this bill made it so that college housing respects biological reality and safeguards student privacy and safety, particularly for young women. So this is a big bill to protect women. And if you look at the testimony, that public comment that was given for the House and and the Senate hearings of this, you'll see the woman who brought this bill courageously testify, and sitting right next to the male RA who was acting the victim. And he could have gone to a co-ed dorm as well. And so it was just a great example of courage here in Utah. Okay, another win was HB 281, Health Curriculum and Procedures. And this empowers parents by requiring consent for school-based telehealth and mental health therapy, ensuring transparency in the health curriculum. Now, what's great about this bill is that if a counselor is going to talk to your child, you can ask them not to talk about certain topics that might be really triggering for them, or that you don't agree with certain agendas. So sets the parent in the driver's seat of what happens with their child. And the second piece of this that I really liked is that it made sex ed about reproduction. As we all know, sex ed is you can talk about all the different gender or sexual ideologies or practices, and we don't need to talk about that in the classroom with students, but we can talk about reproduction. So it changed the word to reproduction for sex ed. So another win was HB 144, school district contracting. It prevents schools from entering agreements with the Federal Department of Justice that could undermine parental rights or state authority without state level review. That's what happened in the Davis School District. And my representative, Ariel DeFay, ran this bill. And it was really good to pass because the Department of Justice was coming in and making reports and sending it to a third party where we didn't even know where it went about our children. And this was being sent without the knowledge or permission of the parents, and our children the reports about them were being written up. And so this protects them and prohibits the school district from going into contract with the Department of Justice. Another win was HB 381 and SB 334 about civics education. It's going to be amazing. HB 381 will bring in civics requirements in 2027 so that our graduating seniors have more experience and understanding through original source documents, and also getting to know about the caucus system here in Utah and about how they can get involved at every level of government. So they'll be graduating with more civics education, which I'm the civic engagement director for Moms for America. So this is super exciting for me. And also SB 334. This is great, passed by Senator John Johnson, or sponsored by him. And he made it so that our schools, our universities, will be going back to, it's called a Center for Civic Excellence, and ensures that students understand the constitutional principles that make our nation great. So HB 447 is a Catalyst campus model. It expands educational options for families and offers hands-on career-focused learning pathways aligned with real-world needs. So that's another great one. Another win is HB 453. This bill by itself didn't pass, but on the last day it was rolled into another Representative Walt Brooks bills, or so I'm told. I haven't found it yet. But it makes it easier to understand what the state school board is doing, and there's greater transparency. Now, this is huge because I was tracking all the votes from the state school board, trying to understand how they were serving us, who was voting on what, and what they actually do, because how do we know what they do? So I would go through and make spreadsheets of all their votes, and I couldn't understand it. So for me particularly, I'm really excited about this bill. It'll be easy to understand how our representatives, whom we have elected, are actually serving us, and so we can communicate with them on the issues that matter to us. There's an ongoing fight now. It's HB 267. It actually passed. It's a really good bill. Please look in Amplify and scroll down in the Act tab and see how to explain HB 267. But basically, it's preserving it so that unions were protecting kids and not unions. So what happened was unions were taking a lot of their money and they were promoting agendas or campaigns or whatever with those taxpayer dollars. They were also getting a cut on renting spaces where they didn't have to pay and other people would have to pay. So it's basically saying, and there's there was collective bargaining. And this is allowing teachers to bargain for themselves as well. And there's a lot that goes into it, but basically we got the bill passed, the governor signed it, but the unions are very upset with this. So they're running a referendum, and they have 30 days to get 170 or 140 signatures, 140,000 signatures on all of the Senate districts in Utah so that it can go on the ballot and the people can vote for it. So if you see this, vote no on it. And please look it up and go to utahparentsunited.org. They have a whole bunch explaining this to answer your questions so that you can be informed and make the best decision for you. So they're running a campaign right now called Decline to Sign the Referendum pushed by teacher unions. So they're trying to overturn HB 267. But what happens is this law rightly keeps education focused on students, not union politics. So we must protect our kids from union control. Another one of concern is SB 178. This is about devices in public schools. So this is going to go into effect. It already passed. Some parents are concerned about that this bill passed, because if there is something that happens of concern in the classroom, such as we've seen by the teacher in Lehigh berating kids and telling them their parents are losers. And we've also seen other instances in the classroom of how do I know if my kid is okay, and where they can record anything that goes against the law. And so one parent suggested getting a recorder separate from the phone. Another parent suggested signing an opt-out form and giving it to the school, saying my child will be able to use their phone in class for that stated purpose, not for doing anything else, but in case. So parents still have options here. And make sure you know what your rights are, because it's possible that your rights are being infringed upon, and we need to know with our constitutional rights. And we could see where this bill is coming from, because it was meant to reduce distractions in the classroom. Some parents might be really happy, others are concerned. So communicate with your rep how you feel about this. So this bill passed despite concerns it might limit necessary parent-child communication during school hours as well. I believe it's a bell-to-bell limitation on phones. So the next one was a win. HB 77 was flag display amendments. It ensures respect for the core symbols by limiting flags in schools primarily to the United States flag, the Utah flag, and other official banners, preventing the display of divisive political flags. Now what happens with this is the governor allowed it to become law without signature, and in his reasoning you can read all the votes he vetoed. He put out a paper about it. I'll put it in here. But he said, what if they want to wear pins? And that also, if they're pushing an agenda, is against the law. So go to utahparentsunited.org and you could see their reasoning on that. Follow them on Instagram, Moms for America as well. And you can see and learn how you feel about this, how it affects your child. Okay, so here's another win in freedom was HB 488. This is federalism amendments. This reasserts Utah's commitment to principles of federalism. Federalism is also a check and balance common in our society. We're aware of the judicial, legislative, and executive. Those are the main checks and balances we're aware of. But the other major check and balance is between the states and the federal government. And to reassert that line where the federal government should not be overtaking states' rights is the department is called federalism. And so at UVU, they have a federalism think tank, and this is a great amendments as we keep going forward with understanding our rights and asserting them, because if we don't know where the checks and balances are for the federal government, then we can't enforce them and we lose our liberty. So the next one is one of my favorite. It's HCR 15. This passed the House, but it didn't pass the Senate. I was told it was because of time. It was the very last week and it didn't get through. It wasn't because of policy. And we hear a lot about the separation of church and state. This goes into that. So if you read it, it is not a law, it's just a concurrent resolution which sets forth a common understanding of the division between church and state, or maybe that's not how it was intended to be created. So go and read it and tell me what you think. info@amplify-usa.com, that's me. And I think this bill is great because it gives historical evidence for these issues. because a lot of people think that you can't have it. But what it does is it supports the inclusion of religion in government and education. It supports the right of public school students and teachers to openly express their faith, encourages the accommodation of religious observances in government and community settings, supports the protection of religious symbols in public spaces, and encourages the fostering of respectful dialogue among diverse faith traditions. So these are some of the things that the bill does. And this is important because we have been tending as a society, by thinking that there's a separation of church and state, we have been tending to think that this is the way it should be. But we also know that our form of government and our society cannot exist in a moral vacuum. You need a moral people who understand how to apply and create and use these laws in order to make our liberty the most beneficial to all people, and have that balance between freedom, and control. I think that's the wrong word, but anyway, you don't want to go into anarchy, you don't want to go into tyranny, and so you have to have a balance of both. So the rights of others can be protected while you have certain rights without having the right to kill other people. So we all understand that, but we need a morality in order to practice it. And so by this bill helps the people understand that division while maintaining their morality. Okay, here's another bill. We have a problem with election integrity. This bill got passed, but it wasn't in a very effective state. It's called HB 300. It's a step in the right direction. It requires your ID verification for ballot returns, but disappointingly watered down from stronger measures needed to secure elections fully. So we have to keep up this battle. And what's behind these bills is there was a whistleblower who came and said, hey, I am not a citizen and I have been able to vote in all of these elections. And that's because when they go and they said, I want to register to vote at the DMV, the county clerk is not checking that to see if they actually are a citizen before they send out a ballot to them. So there's these holes in between the DMV and the county clerk that we have that are allowing non-citizens to vote. And we want to maintain that so that we don't have dead people voting as well, or people who don't even exist. We want to protect our voting, because if we don't have election integrity, how can we preserve our freedom? So anyway, there's a lot on this bill. You can go read it on the spreadsheet. I typed it into the little box at like size 6 font, so you'll have to blow it up to see it. But basically, this is very watered down, and we need more public understanding of the need for these election integrity bills. So another bill, HB 270, it didn't pass. There were some problems with it, and they took it off. And HB 332, voter registration data. These are all efforts to ensure that we have clean, transparent voter rolls and prevent non-citizens from voting. So these were all bills that didn't pass. We need more people to be aware and working on this. We also had HB 315 was vetoed by the governor. He said it was due to constitutional concerns over using a game of chance to resolve ties. I don't know about that. So another one that passed that we need to watch was SB 277, government records. What this is about is when you do a GRAMA request, which is like a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, so that for your elected representatives, you can get the emails or the communications that they have and see what's been going on behind the scenes. And as they've been trying to do this, there's been a backlog. And so this was proposed as a solution so that we could have more people doing it. Now, the controversy on SB 277 was that the governor would appoint and watch over this, and people who don't trust the governor or want it as a volunteer. So it was just a messy system. I believe it's still messy. There are some who really like this bill. There are some who don't. So you might want to look into SB 277. And sometimes bills start off really bad, and as they go through the process, there are substitutions and amendments that make it better, more palatable, and easier to, and that's the whole purpose of the process, is so that you can come up with these things. So I'll have to go read the bill in its past form and make my own opinion on this. I was initially very concerned about this. I want as much freedom of information as possible, and I didn't necessarily want the government to be the one dispensing this information or managing how it was done. So take a look at that bill. Okay, so now we are on to the finance and fiscal responsibility bills, and we want to see what's going on with those. So we had two wins, HB 67 and HB 306. Those passed, and that was by Representative Ken Ivory. Now these bills were really good because it bases our money on gold, and that was taken away in 1972, and so our money has just been based on our money, and that's very dangerous for inflation. It's not protected, and even though HB 306 precious metals passed, it was still vetoed by the governor. So right now what's happening is the House voted to take it to a special session, because even though it was a majority, essentially veto proof, they're going to bring it back. And right now the Senate is deciding if they want to do the same thing on this bill. But the good thing about HB 306 and 67, it was passed in years before, and these were ways to make it better, so such as electronic usage of this. But it allows the state to invest in and manage precious metals like gold, and recognizing gold value as sound money. We want to invest in gold to protect money from inflation. The bill passed with a supermajority. Here is the kicker. Had we invested all 10% of the rainy day fund, so this was meant to say the state's rainy day fund or their savings account, 10% of it could be invested in gold. And that was all it was. It's not like we're going to go around trading gold bars. This was just to say our savings can be in gold. Had they done it on the effective date of HB 348, that was last year's bill, the state would have increased this 10%, which was of their rainy day fund, which was $140 million, by $64.8 million in 10 months. But they preferred to go slow, so we don't have that gain. They didn't do what the original bill intended. So now it's in the Senate attempting to override the governor's veto. So please contact your senator and ask them to vote to override the governor's veto on HB 306. Okay, now we have SB 197, property tax amendments. This was also vetoed due to concerns from county governments about implementation challenges. You can go research it. It's kind of interesting how all this plays out. But at the end of this, I'd just like to thank the courageous legislators who championed these critical bills. The wins we had for food, family, freedom, and finance, they're all significant victories for Utah citizens, but we have to remain vigilant, and please make sure you don't decline to sign HB 267 referendum. Contact your senator about HB 306, and let's continue to stand together and hold our elected officials accountable, be grateful for them, and defend the God-given rights that we have to raise our families according to our values.